Cutscenes in flat games are an interesting subject. If the game has anything other than a stellar story, then I usually can't fully immerse myself in any cutscenes. My exceptions are games like Red Dead Redemption and The Last of Us. Obviously I have more exceptions than that, but those are the two that come to mind. And for those games that have those unskippable yap sessions, any fucking Zelda game! It gets to a point where I'll pull out my phone or do something else while I wait for the game to finally shut up and let me play the thing I paid for. But in VR, cutscenes are a whole nother ballgame. When they're done right, they stick out and are so much more memorable than in any other type of medium, but when they're done poorly, it can be enough for me to stop playing entirely. Before we dive into the deepest pit of hell, let's start with what I consider good cutscenes in VR. Half-Life Alyx has a lot of cutscenes that you may have not even noticed were cutscenes due to the interactivity of them. At the start of the game, one of the main characters, Russell, is explaining to you what is essentially the main goal of the game. To keep this from driving the player insane with boredom, this takes place in an area with a whole bunch of things to fidget around with and play with while you're waiting for the action to pick up. There's a fridge, weird gadgets, and during his spiel about everything, he has you place an object of your choosing to represent yourself on the map. It's cute, it's fun, it does a good job at preventing Robert from gouging his eyes out because of his TikTok attention span. Pretty much every cutscene is interactive to some degree, and it does a great job at letting the player feel a part of whatever's going on. Later on, there's one where you have to pull a lever to stop the train, and the lever snaps off. On a flat screen, this would have just been a simple little animation that plays, and if you're lucky, it would have given you a QuickTime event where you press a letter from the alphabet on your keyboard instead of actually pulling a lever. In VR, it made me feel like the dumbass who broke the lever, and it immersed me so much more in the moment. It's great. This is what I'd consider to be VR cutscenes done at their absolute best. But this is a first-party Valve game, so to expect this level of care and fun factor in a cutscene in other games is a little unfair, as this is yet to be widely adopted by most VR games. Lots of them don't quite reach this high, but they can still do a good job without needing to match the top dog in this field. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners has a good bit of dialogue throughout its runtime, but I found the story interesting enough to not mind it all too much. It was cool and fun to me because I gave a shit, but I could only imagine how someone who doesn't feels when playing a game like this. Arizona Sunshine 2 has some cutscenes that play out quickly and usually with a lot of visually stimulating things like on-screen explosions or generally fairly interesting stuff, like saving your little buddy from bleeding to death and making you manually pick out the glass shards from him. I don't know if I'd necessarily consider that a cutscene, but there is no fail condition and it is more or less just to build the story, so in this case I'm gonna go with considering it one. Job Simulator is filled with essentially small gags that I guess I'd consider cutscenes, but they're quick and witty, so they more so make the experience rather than just adding to it. On a similar note, Virtual Reality is a game that is mainly narrative focused, so having cutscenes makes a lot of sense, but they are done very tastefully and usually directly relate to what the player is doing or needs to do. Project Mix currently has an incredible demo. The game is basically a VR visual novel, which means the whole game is mostly an interactive cutscene at its core. You serve drinks and meet really exceptionally well-written characters. I swear I'm not a gooner, this game is genuinely super peak. These are what I'd consider VR cutscenes done right. They're either interactive, interesting, or fun in some way. This should be how all cutscenes are in general games too, but in VR it's a lot more important since I can't really look away if I'm bored. I also feel it's important to give the player at least something to play with during any cutscene that isn't obviously a big moment, in case it's not as interesting as intended. This way, our shrunken brains can have God please anything to do when listening to some fuck-ass character yap about the least interesting thing you've ever heard in your life. Boneworks has a bunch of vague lore cutscenes, but they're all either skippable or played on a monitor that you can literally smash. You can even skip the final cutscene if you super don't give a shit, which I think is pretty cool. Not everyone cares about MythOS's vague posting, so not forcing it down the player's throat is a good thing. Batman Arkham Shadow has an awesome story, and the cutscenes take advantage of the 3D factor in VR, which is pretty cool, but a couple of the cutscenes are misses. I found a very small few of them to go on longer than I'd like, but this game lets you skip most of the cutscenes. So if you don't care for one, you can just skip it. You can even skip the really cool and interesting ones, which I'd personally never do, even on my 5th playthrough, because I just love them that much. But I think regardless, it's important to give the player this option, so players who are only here for the gameplay can jump straight to it if they'd like to. These games do cutscenes to what I'd consider an acceptable level of cutscenery. If the cutscene isn't going to be directly interactive or something, and a player could realistically skip them and keep playing the game just fine, then let them skip it. I'm sure animating these cutscenes took a lot of work or whatever, but sometimes I really just don't give a shit. Sometimes I just want to replay Batman because the gameplay is awesome. I came here to play as Batman, not watch someone talk about Batman. But it's not so bad because again, if you don't care, you can skip it. So it's not really a big deal at all. But now, it's time to talk about the 9/11 of cutscenes. The unskippable yap sessions. These are the equivalent to being stuck in a conversation with someone you find super boring, but if you walk away from them mid-conversation, you're an asshole. So you're instead talking with some chud about how they eat dirt and masturbate to Fortnite skins. But even that's better than some of these cutscenes because at least now you know you have something in common with that person. Go ahead and guess which one I have in common. Deadpool VR is super guilty of this. This game desperately needs to learn when to end my suffering. A very small amount of the cutscenes are skippable, and I do like a lot of them, but I also fucking despise a lot of them as well, so it's still super hell. Some of the cutscenes are just never-ending conversations with a buzzword thrown in to keep you stimulated. But throwing the word Five Nights at Freddy's in there is not enough to keep the player engaged. Unless you're me, then anything that utters those words wake you up like a sleeper agent. But the other random phrases do not accomplish this. They just talk and fucking talk. And they don't even let you dick around with your weapons or anything during this. So you're just stuck in super hell and super boredom. But the absolute worst sin of this is if you dare try to open the meta system menu to watch YouTube or something to prevent your brain from exploding, the game will do you the courtesy of pausing the entire game! So you can't escape the cutscene until you watch the entire thing, which unironically can go up to 5 minutes! Shut the fuck up! Why torture me like this? Why not just let me play the game? To pad out the runtime? I don't understand! Another super sin of this game is that they actually programmed it to let you skip these cutscenes, but it's saved for only after you beat the game! What the fuck? It sucks because this game is awesome. Gameplay is fun, environments are creative, and I actually do like the story in it too. It's a great game, but hurt so much by these cutscenes that I wound up having a chair on standby when playing this game to push past the bloat. It's actually one update away from being so much better, but the studio is shut down now, so I doubt that will ever happen, unfortunately. Assassin's Creed Nexus is also another ultimate test of my patience, where cutscenes can go on and on and on, except instead of being a straight up awesome game like Deadpool is after the Spotify podcast ends, Assassin's Creed is just okay. If you don't have the patience for a lot of long cutscenes, I would genuinely recommend you don't play Nexus purely because of how long they talk, as the game itself does not justify the time commitment. When Asgard's Wrath 2 came out, I heard such insane glazing for how supposedly incredible the game was. I figured I'd give the game a shot since it came free with my Quest 3, and wow, this game was dreadful. I'm sorry, Asgard's Wrath fans, I could not do it. I do not like this game, and it's because of the pace killing that plagued my entire experience. I played maybe 2 hours before deciding I couldn't handle it anymore. I personally did not care for the story at all, so being locked into unskippable cutscenes drove me insane. I didn't like this game for other reasons as well, like the 300 puzzles between the 5 minutes of admittedly really fun combat. It's a bit upsetting because I can tell there's a lot of love here, but Asgard's Wrath 2 just wasn't for me. Look, I'm sure this game has a lot to offer and is an objectively good game and all, but personally, I only have so much patience. And the main thing I saw people tell me when I said I didn't like the game was, just give it a couple more hours, it gets good, I swear. I don't doubt it, but I'm not willing to go through literal hours of something I don't enjoy just to try the supposed good part. And the uninteresting story was not helping for me, so by making the cutscenes completely unskippable, the game was essentially unplayable for me. Wanderer Fragments of Fate is another game that suffered the Deadpool problem for me. Too much talking, unskippable cutscenes, and I jumped off a boat at the beginning of the game and it reset an entire cutscene, so I straight up stopped playing after that. I was also experiencing horrible Unreal Engine frame rate syndrome, so that plus everything else was enough for me to not want to push through and see the rest of the game. The dialogue was also unimaginably corny. I'm sorry, I just could not handle it. Those are the games that are the worst offenders of cutscenes in VR. Of those super annoying cutscene games I just listed, the only two of those I actually beat was Deadpool and Assassin's Creed, because it was the only two with gameplay good enough to make up for the drawback for me. So, due to the more immersive nature of VR games, being in the experience can either greatly enhance cutscenes or dramatically make them worse, and because of that, it's something VR devs should keep a closer eye on than regular flat screen devs. Cutscenes can be absolutely experience ruining if not given proper care, and if you're not going to give them proper care, then you have to at least make them skippable. Unless your game is a visual novel or something, in which case it makes sense that they wouldn't be. That's all from me. Consider subscribing if you want me to keep doing these cool topic-specific VR videos. They're a lot of fun and a welcome breath of fresh air from the non-stop Bone Lab talk. If you enjoyed this video, consider checking out my last one where I talk about flat screen ports in VR. It's like my best video this year. You can get 10% off the entire Quest store using the link in the description. It's the best way to support the channel and is a free discount for you if you want to get some money back on your next VR purchase. It works for hardware as well. With all of that out of the way, I will catch you in the next time, fat bitches. Bye-bye!